Hello, my name's Anthony Wright and this is my company, the Barrhead Leather Company. My family have been tanners for over 7 generations, and as we moved through time we got more and more sophisticated with the leathers we were producing and further away from the natural product that leather is. Most recently I've moved back into the idea of producing authentic traditional types of leathers. The most basic of which will be the rawhide. This is deerskin rawhide. Most of it goes for shamanic drum makers for making drum skins. It's an ideal drum skin, but of course it's used in the making of shields either for edging or for full facing of shields. I'm currently processing a lot of wild Scottish stag, which are of a very good size, and you'll get full shields out of those. The prices for the rawhide ranges from £55 to £75 depending on the size and the quality. Another sort of basic product that I make with the deerskin is tanning them with the hair on. These are fallow deer, particularly nice one here with the spots on. I do a very soft tannage, so they're ideal for using for capes or for clothing or for flooring or just general decoration. These again are very popular. The price depending on the quality, but you're looking at about £60 for an average good grade skin. I do process some sheepskin. This sheepskin I do in the traditional alum tannage. So this is a toured process. Historically they would have been tanned with alum, flour and egg yolk. I use an egg yolk substitute now. I can't be bothered cracking eggs all day long when I'm putting a drum load of skins in. But it gives you this natural white leather. So it's the alum that gives it its whiteness. So it hasn't been sprayed with any artificial plastic coating to make it white. This is the colour it comes out of the drum after I've tanned it with alum. Very good for gloving, but any application where you're requiring a white leather, I can shave the thickness down to make them slightly thinner. The substance of this at the moment is probably a good 1.5 millimeters. It's quite a chunky piece of leather. Because it's sheepskin, it's inherently soft, but again with a variety of applications. These are veg tanned sheepskins. So this again is a sheepskin, well it's more of a lambskin, it's a smaller skin, and it's been tanned purely with veg. It's a very natural tannage. Lovely smell you get from the veg tan. Again, because it's a sheepskin, it is inherently soft. Veg tanned leather traditionally is seen as being a very firm type of leather because you're thinking usually of your veg tan cowhides. But the veg tan can be used to make a nice soft leather as well, especially as I say when you start with something like a sheepskin. I've got a range of qualities, selections of this, but you're looking at about 15 to 20 pounds of skin depending on the size. This is my clothing deerskin. It's a lovely supple piece of leather, ideal for garments. The tannage is a clothing stroke gloving tannage. It's the same process I use for making my gloving leathers for falconry and these sort of applications. Again, there's a beautiful drape on it. It's a good substitute for buckskin if you're looking for making Native American type garments and things like that, or even Western gear, making chaps and things like that. Very good for this, or for tunics or waistcoats. This is another heavyweight veg tanned sheepskin, but done with the gloving tannage, which adds to the inherent softness of the sheepskin to make it even softer. And this has a very good weight to it, very good thickness. So almost for body armor or something like that, or a very thick tunic. This is my standard tannage deerskin. This is dark brown. We produce a lot of dark brown leather. It's slightly firmer, okay for footwear. Maybe a bit too firm for clothing, but I can soften it up if you are looking for a brown clothing leather. This is my black. Again, with the black, because I use a traditional process, I use a pre-metallized dye. So it is a, in fact, it's an azo black dye stuff that I use on this, but with the traditional tannage. But there's no plastic finish sprayed on the leather. It's a very natural looking piece of leather, although it's black. Therefore, if you any restoration work or something like that and you're requiring black leather, this will blend in very well with whatever it's being used with. One of the critical points in leather making is to ensure that the final product has a uniform thickness and one that's appropriate for its intended use. The best way to do this is using a shaving machine, which I'm about to demonstrate now. It's quite a noisy machine, I'm afraid, but anyway, I'm going to switch it on and I'll show you what happens. So we take the skin like this, and I'm going to feed it into this bladed roller here. What it's doing, it's shaving the back of the skin. You can see there the sort of bits that it shaves off. So it's taking the skin down to very, very thin substance. It also produces a very nice finish on the back as well for a suede leather. But that now is a lovely, very, very thin piece of leather. When I soften that up, that would be ideal for a substitute buckskin or something like that. So you can see here the difference. This is the skin after it's been shaved, and this is the skin before. You see the back's all rough and unfinished, and here we've got a nice fine nap. One of the first things you have to do when you're making a piece of leather, assuming you want to have it without any hair on, is to remove the hair. This is done using an unhairing knife, and having soaked the skins in, traditionally you'd use a lye solution, and this loosens the hair follicle, and eventually it gets to the point where the hair comes out really quite easily. It's just scraping it off fairly gently with this knife to reveal the hide underneath. It's important that you don't gouge or scrape into the skin and do any damage. But if it's been left for long enough and you've got your mixture right, the hair should come off fairly easily, as you can see here, without any problem at all. It's always interesting when you remove the hair and it reveals the grain underneath. To say it's a delight is a bit of a weird thing to say, but you do start to see the leather developing at this stage when you can see the characteristic of the skin coming through, and you get an idea of what you're going to end up with. So when you've finished unhairing the skin, it then goes into a tub and gets washed again, and clean the skin up as much as possible, ready for the pickling process. The pickling process is the the pre-tanning process. It gets the skin ready to receive the tanning agents. So I'll move over now and show you a pickled skin. So this is the pickled skin. This has been washed and then it's been in a bath of salt and hydrochloric acid. So it's got a very, very low pH. The pH of the skin is probably about 2.5. If I put this in fresh water now, the skin will swell up due to well, osmosis. It's called acid swelling, and if you have an acidic raw skin like this and you put it in ordinary water, it plumps up very, very quickly and swells. So it's important that when I put this skin back into process, that I put it into a salt solution, so the salt already in the water before I put it in, and this reverses the osmotic pressure. It means the skin won't swell when I process it. Once the skin's tanned, it's not a problem, but at this stage it's very susceptible to swelling, and when it swells, it distorts the fibre structure of the skin and weakens the leather. The resultant leather will always be very tender and will tear. So this osmotic swelling is something that's beaten into us at an early age when we're learning about leather making. That it's, if you can imagine, if you're processing 1,200 skins at a time or something, and you get the osmotic pressure right, you could knacker up £5,000 worth of leather overnight. Alright, so I've got my fresh water here, and I'm going to add salt to it. About a kilo of salt should be enough. So I've basically got a fairly strong saline solution here, and I'll now put the skin into it. If the skin's going to swell, it will start to do it after a few minutes. But I'm completely confident that skin is not going to swell in that solution. The next thing I need to do prior to tanning it is to raise the pH, because the pH is too low at the moment, and the tanning materials will just stick on the surface. So I've got to raise the pH now to make the skin less attractive to the tanning material. So when I put the tannins into that mixture, that liquor, they'll permeate all the way through the skin. So I'm just now going to add my neutralising agent. So for neutralising, we use sodium bicarbonate. So I'll put a scoop of that in. Not that you can see it, but when I put that in, as the sodium bicarbonate neutralises the acid by reacting it, and it's giving off carbon dioxide, so you can see this sort of effervescence coming out of the tub when I put it in. And I'm going to leave it to neutralise overnight now. Then in the morning I'll drain that liquor off and make a fresh batch up of water, and then I'll add my vegetable tannins to it, my tanning extract to that, and then leave it to soak in that for a couple of days. Right, I've got my tanning bath ready now. So this is a my tan liquor, which is mimosa bark. My family have always used mimosa for the veg tanning. It gives a nice biscuity colour to the leather, but not too intense. But there are a variety of vegetable tanning extracts you can use. Oak bark obviously is the one that everyone knows about. The chestnut as well. So I'm going to put the skin that we've been neutralising into the mimosa bark mix now. And as you see, it hasn't swollen up at all, which was my concern. And there's a nice softness to it now already. I'll put it in this, my tan mix, and it's going to have to stay in there, probably in there for a couple of days, 2 days. I'll keep stirring it around every so often, try and prevent any stain forming on the skin or anything like that. And then it'll be ready for drying out and stretching on my toggling frames. So, after 2 days in this tan liquor and having been stirred around every 12 hours or so, I've now got a piece of tan leather, a beautiful colour from the veg tan. That's a completely natural piece of leather using natural products to produce it. So this is ready for stretching out and drying now, which I shall do on my drying frames. I dry them in the sun when I can. If there's no sun, I don't dry them. I don't like drying them indoors because it costs too much money. I mean, I do that when I have to, but on a sunny day, we'll get them out. So I'm going to stretch this skin out now on my toggling frames. When you dry your leather naturally like this, it doesn't dry out too firm. It keeps it fairly soft. I mean, there's a stiffness to it when it's dry, but it's better than force drying with steam heat or something like that. So I'll stretch the skin out on these toggling frames now. Right, that skin should dry out in a few hours in the sun. And they'll be ready for taking down and softening. Right, that's the skin ready for softening. You do that just by manipulating it, stretching it, and pulling it, and working it. And it'll soften it up. So there you have a piece of naturally veg tanned deerskin leather. Don't try this at home.